I want to share with you a methodology that a billionaire that I met in Antarctica, of all places, shared with me privately in a small group of 3 that can help you get anything that you want. And it made so much sense. So I had to go far and wide to get this information. I'm a knowledge seeker, and I'm going to share this tidbit with you today. Okay, so it's something that I realized that has gotten me far on accident as a knowledge seeker in the social skills, personal development space. And now it's something that I've seen that has been serving me well in the health department. And I'll give you specific examples on that. So the methodology that he said was, if you want to get the top results in any given field, go learn everything that you possibly can from the top 3 guys, the top 1 percentile of people. Choose 3, maybe 5 guys. Learn everything from them. And then combine their different modalities. And what you'll be able to see are the patterns, the differences, and the nuances. And then from there, not only will you be able to replicate their results, you're going to be able to create your own. And potentially be even better off and further off than them. And I see this as an extremely logical and obvious way of doing things. It just takes time, but it's a shortcut compared to the amount of time that you'd have to spend to become one of those guys yourself. Instead, just learn the most important things from these people, the 80-20 rule, essentially. And what he said was, every person should be their own doctor and banker. Because the truth is, no one else will give a shit about your health or your wealth, or in this case, even your romantic life or any other part of your life than yourself. So something that I realized that has been helping me is I've taken full ownership of my health for the last 3-4 years. And what do I mean by that? Before, I deferred a lot to doctors. Anything they said went. And as soon as I started seeing news of anti-aging, Dr. David Sinclair, Harvard Medical School professor, fasting, this and that, I was like, interesting. These are all things that sound very counter to what the mainstream zeitgeist cultural narrative were about food at the time. The food pyramid, you need this, you need that, you need this. And then as we can see, a lot of things are shifting. Now old news is outdated, and obviously there's new things, and there'll constantly be an evolution of things and new discoveries, but it honestly felt like doctors are fallible too. A couple years ago, I went to the emergencies. I had some thing that happened that flared up, and not only did it take me forever to get seen, I took a blood test, and the doctor basically prescribed me tramadol and told me to GTFO. And before I left, fortunately, I ran my blood test through a friend who then saw that I had infections and that I needed antibiotics. So I asked the doctor, as I'm crawling out of the hospital bed, barely able to walk, hey, a friend of mine who's also a doctor by training said, I have infections and that I need antibiotics. Can you prescribe me some? Takes a look at it and says, well, clearly you're gonna have no problem getting them yourself, so good luck. You know what you're doing. Dude, there's no time for ego here. I don't care who's right or wrong. It just has nothing to do with that. Tramadol is not even really good for you. It's just a painkiller. It doesn't solve the root issue. Can you just give me something that will help me? And just basically tells me to F off. What I learned about doctors is that they do unglorified work. Yeah, their training is crazy. And honestly, I feel for them. A lot of times they're cooped up in hospitals, crazy work schedules. They have to work, sometimes 48-hour days in residency. And yeah, they get paid well, but man, that trade-off is a hard one. And then once you're in this hospital, it's unglorified. Like, maybe you might have a little status outside of it, but the amount that you make is capped unless you run your own clinic, and people are yelling at you, people are just like getting on you. You only can spend so much time per client. It's just like a huge volume game, right? So I feel for them. Sometimes there's not a real progression for growth. You're in that role and that's it. You also aren't learning a lot unless you're like taking time away to go to different conferences and doing this and doing that. Like, what you learned in med school is now your foundation for how you look at every health problem in life. It's no wonder a lot of the doctors are like just going by the book, and the book doesn't teach you everything. It wouldn't be a stretch that, like the traditional education system, academia just turns people out to be a certain type of way, you know, like good office factory workers, right? It wouldn't surprise me if the medical industry, Western medicine, only looked at problems a certain way. And as you can see from the pharmaceutical industry, the economy is driven by big pharma just prescribing things that don't necessarily cure people. It may alleviate the issue, but you need to rely on some of these things for the rest of your life. That's why Eastern medicine is also making kind of a comeback, and people are finding ways to mix the two together and have their own duality or modalities involving the two. Right? And that's what I realize is, a lot of times, like, if you are just that much more open-minded to studying different modalities and making your own, it would be very easy to start getting better results than just going to the doctor and just following traditional advice without even having to go to med school. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because two reasons. One is health is everything. I did a 7-day fast, my first time doing it earlier this year, and I never felt more clear-headed, vitality, and equanimity in my life. I literally felt the definition of equanimity by the definition itself. I was dealing with all sorts of problems. I was not negatively involved in any way. And I had a little bit of random thoughts that made me eternally grateful. So I had like all the upside in gratitude and like none of the downside in the negativity. And it was a very powerful experience. It was almost a spiritual one, if you could call it that. And what I realized was how much of our mood and our emotion is reliant on our gut health. Our gut health. So many people are taking anxiety medications, this and that, antidepressants, and they eat like shit. But if you were to get the internal part right, the external reflects that. It just blew my mind. So, firstly, having optimal health is definitely a worthy endeavor for as long as we're alive in this body and in this lifetime. And the second thing is, as always, got to tie this back to our social life, our relationships, our dating life. Being an independent, at times contrarian thinker is hugely attractive. And I think you can start seeing why. Because imagine if you are this type of thinker where you are seeking knowledge and applying it into your life, and you now know things that other people don't know that can not only benefit you tremendously, but also benefit others. That is incredibly valuable. That is not only a leadership quality, that is just intrinsically somebody who you'd want to keep in your life in some way, shape, or form. Survival. In fact, it is this way of thinking that propels fields forward and allows for evolution to occur across all facets. And this way of thinking is something that will allow you to not only have amazing benefits just in all parts of your life, but when you're able to speak the truth and commit to a higher ethos than just fitting in, going with the herd, and living in a derp state, you stand out and you move things forward. Now, the only caveat that I'll leave you with is if you are trying to have good interactions with women, do not just rely on red pill podcast things as the God of truth in the dating world and be having crazy discussions with girls about this, because that is a surefire way of not getting laid. Because the ethos is basically like shaming girls for being whores, and that their only value is their loyalty, and if they do certain things, this and that. There are a lot of principles that I do think are true. Do I agree with everything? No. Is it kind of a sad way to live to just like rely on looks, money, status? Yes. Are those things important? Yeah, they definitely have their place in life, in reality, but there are certain things that also transcend those things. Know them to figure out where you stand, and there are certain truths that aren't talked about, for sure, but talking about them with girls a lot of times is going to just kill the mood, kill the dynamic, especially if you want something to happen between you and somebody else. So don't do that. Anyways, on that note, till next time, peace. Tell me what your thoughts are.